Hello and welcome to the Ghosts on Film panel. I am your moderator, Chuck Cart. We are going to be going down the line and introducing everyone, starting with Dylan Jones.
Hi, I'm Dylan Jones. I'm a parapsychologist in the UK. I'm currently doing my PhD looking at media representations of paranormal phenomena and the people who investigate it.
Hi, I am Jen Hart. I write under Crimson Heart. I am a psychic medium, and most of my writing experience has come from all the stuff that's happened to me over the years.
My name is Alex Matsuo, and I'm a paranormal investigator, researcher, and author. Been doing this for about over 10-ish, 15 years now. And yeah, I write books about how to ghost hunt. I've also been on Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places in America. And my love of the paranormal really cultivated from film. So that's why I'm here.
All right, and I am Chuck Cart, your moderator for this panel. I am a writer and comedian. I'm also a paranormal investigator, and I've been investigating kind of in the amateur and then professional realm for around 15 years now. So as this is about like a panel about ghosts on film, I thought we'd start with what was your first ghost encounter on film? Like, what was your first experience, like when you watched a movie that had a ghost in it?
I saw Poltergeist when I was 4, and yes, and it scared the shit out of me, and it also got me hooked on ghosts and most of anything in paranormal.
All right, Dylan, how about you? What was your first ghost experience? Because, man, Poltergeist is tough to top. That's a scary movie.
Yeah.
Well, mine was on the other end of the spectrum, really. It was early 1985, and I'd been pestering my mum for weeks to take me to go and see this film that had been advertised on TV and that we'd seen the posters everywhere, and it was Ghostbusters. And obviously in the UK, we had it a little bit later on than what you did in the US. But that moment of going to the cinema and being sat in a full auditorium, and when the theme tune starts, everybody was singing along to Ray Parker Jr.'s theme song. So that was my first encounter with ghosts on film. And when I watched that film, that was it. I was hooked.
And Alex, you had mentioned that that film is kind of where you got interested in ghosts for the first time. What was your first ghost related film?
My first ghost related film was, it's not scary or anything, but it was Ghost with Patrick Swayze.
Oh, that pottery scene,
Yeah.
that's a feeling.
Yep. Yep.
Like Dylan, it was Ghostbusters, and like I did Ghostbuster cosplay for 10 years, and it's oddly what got me into paranormal investigating, because it was like the number one question we always got asked was like, are you a paranormal investigator like for real, or are you just like a costume guy? We're like, no, we do it for real. And then we started doing almost equal parts investigating and equal parts cosplaying. Why do you think we are so fascinated with ghosts on film as a society? Because it seems to be like an ebb and flow and like a resurgence every couple of years of just a saturation of ghost films. What do you think our fascination is with ghosts? And this question's to the panel.
I'll go first then. I think it's just very much part of human nature. It's a subject that we've always been interested in. And when cinema really started to have its emergence, sort of the 1920s and 30s, there were a lot of films that actually catered towards that. And funny enough, earlier on today, I've been researching through the ghost-related films that stem as far back as the early 1900s. And there are literally so many. So it's always been a subject that has intrigued us. And I suppose seeing our terrors or our fears played out on screen perhaps is a good way of us being able to deal with what we like to investigate. And perhaps even if we watch the comedies, it makes us able to laugh at it as well.
Jen, what are your feelings on that?
Yeah, I think that, as a society, we're drawn to, the darker side of things and things that we can't explain. So seeing what you might think of in your imagination in the visual sense on screen kind of helps put a a face to it, and, a face to the terror almost, if you're going for the more scarier stuff.
All right, thank you. And Alex, what do you think our fascination with ghosts as a society is on film?
Well, ghosts are very versatile plot devices as well. So, I mean, not only have we always been interested in them because we don't know what ghosts are. I mean, we are still trying to explain ghosts even to this day. And they're also very flexible when it comes to plot and drama and comedy. I mean, because ghosts can be funny and they can be scary. So I think, at least speaking from the Hollywood side, and just my experience in the arts and the film industry, they're very useful storytelling tools. And it's something that people will always be interested in no matter what, even if it's, even if we come out with a ghost movie every month, I mean, there's always going to be an interest in it. So.
Well, and at times it does feel like we have a new movie of the month when it comes to ghosts.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess as a plot device and looking, I guess, specifically on our preferences, when watching a film about ghosts, do you prefer like it to be just a comedic plot device, or like are you more into like the accuracy in the depiction? We'll start with Alex and kind of work our way back around.
I think for me, I'm more interested in the accuracy and the depiction of it. I know this wasn't a movie, but I thought The Haunting of Hill House was the most accurate portrayal of ghosts that I've ever seen in the entertainment industry. Especially when we don't, speaking as a ghost hunter, we don't know like the stories behind these hauntings really. We think we might be able to figure it out, but most of the time we don't. And I thought The Haunting of Hill House, the Netflix adaptation, not the book, because the book is pretty different. The Netflix adaptation, I was like, wow, this is actually pretty accurate to what, at least I believe, is what the ghost experience is like. So, yeah. And I mean, I enjoy and I think they're all accurate in a way, even with Patrick Swayze and Ghost, I mean, how you act in life, you either reap what you sow when you pass or you get rewarded type of thing. I mean, and that's something we've been hammered with since mankind, like heaven and hell and that sort of thing. So I think they all have a little bit of accuracy in a way. I mean, even like a kid's movie with ghosts, like Paranormal, having a kid who can see ghosts and navigating his life around seeing ghosts, but then being able to resolve a paranormal situation of a young girl spirit. And that's what mediums are doing today too. So I feel like they all have a little bit of truth woven in each of them.
All right, Jen, same question. Do you prefer accuracy over, accuracy and depiction over the entertainment value as a plot device?
A little bit of both. I mean, I'm a horror buff anyways, so besides watching ghost movies, I watch, whatever horror films out there. But in terms of ghost movies, I like to be scared. So I like the depiction, but I also like the plot device of, where they're going to pop up, how they interact with people, if they're good or bad, or if they're indifferent, or just depending on the subject matter of the film. But I more or less like to be scared.
All right, Dylan, same question.
Well, I like to have a laugh. And I think watching Ghostbusters is probably the real tonic. But it also serves as a great way of helping children. Because I think after the first film was released, a lot of psychologists found that children were playing Ghostbusters because they were looking out for an invisible enemy instead of fighting with each other. So it was great from that point of view. Where I get concerned is where you have films which are based on true cases and how they have been twisted to tell a Hollywood story. And I particularly think of films like The Conjuring 2, which for me, because I know the details of the actual case that they're referring to and how wildly it differs, then I have an issue with what they've portrayed up on screen. And I think it makes the job for those of us like Alex who want to investigate it, but it gives a perception to the public about how they think we should investigate it and possibly what's going on in their home. So yeah, I'd rather it be funny because I think that's easier to deal with.
Well, see, I tend to agree. There's something about Ghostbusters specifically where like I think you get some level, maybe not of accuracy, but of like the correct approach, where it's so based in science that, and it's even though it's not the exact science of it, it's based in Dan Aykroyd's love of the paranormal and his family history, but it also makes it palpable to the audience by maybe reducing the science or simplifying the science and then adding that comedic flair. In terms of like how film portrays the paranormal investigator and the investigations into the paranormal, do you think it is I guess been an overall, do you think that it has changed for the better or for the worse the way society treats both ghosts and ghost hunters?
Good question. I think Ghostbusters taught us to laugh, especially as parapsychologists. We could laugh at it because I think that suggests a fundamental sense of security. But where I have a problem is what it's done today with the likes of the Warrens, who tend to be held, from what I can gather, in quite high esteem in the States. In the UK, amongst the academic community, they're not liked at all. And their portrayal, I think, gives sort of a bad light on the way that investigations could and should be done.
All right, Jen, how do you feel? Because you're a medium. Like, how do you feel that, like, I guess the perception of what you do is altered by the lens of film?
Well, I think most people, the public expects a medium to go in the house, and all of a sudden, like, you're bombarded with ghosts or demons, and you're possessed, and you should be running out of the house. But for me, that's not the way it is. Most of my life, I more or less just go along with the daily routine and don't really worry about the supernatural. So with the media, I think they have higher expectations of what a medium really is and how accurate it is sometimes. Because sometimes you can go into a place and it can be loud for someone, and for someone else they're not talking, or you don't connect with a place or a person. So it's really hard when you see some of the famous psychics on TV or on some of the other ghost shows, and they're always hitting all the time, which is wonderful, but it's also very hard for someone like me who just goes about doing her daily thing, and people expect you to live up this expectation of being right all the time, and sometimes it's just not that way.
And Alex, what do you feel that it's done to like the perception of what you do? Because you are a not only a noted but an accomplished investigator, and a respected one. So what do you think that the cultural perception through film does to your work?
Well, oftentimes, especially when we're doing residential cases and working with clients, we'll have to correct our clients on the process of how things work. Because we do have a very specific process when we're investigating a haunting, and it can go back and forth between, oh, well, in this TV show or in this movie, those guys did it this way. And it's like, well, okay, well, yeah, fair, but that's also TV and it's not a reflection of reality. So, and most people are receptive of that. So a lot of times it's just very gentle clarification, and it's interesting sometimes. And when I tell people, well, I keep my ghost hunting life fairly low key when I'm at work and stuff, because I don't mind if people find out about it, but I do worry of the perceptions of it, which is why I don't really tell a lot of people in my normal life about it, my muggle life, as I call it. So, and like I said, most of the time it's just very gentle, like clarification of, well, this is how it actually works. I apologize because it's not that exciting. That's probably the one thing I will kind of apologize for on behalf of the ghost hunting world. It's like, it's really not that exciting. It is when activity happens that you may be sitting there for 8 hours and you'll have activity for 5 minutes, if that. But it's worth it. Those 8 hours are worth it for that little 5-minute snippet of experience. So.
But isn't it interesting, Alex, when you mention that, is that, you know, in Ghostbusters, they get the call, they're straight out, they're responding like it's an emergency.
Yep.
And that is very much the way I think reality television has taken it, that they're responding to something, they're there to help.
Yep.
And have you seen the latest Poltergeist film, the remake?
I haven't seen the remake, because I love the first one. But actually, it's funny you mention that, because a lot of times when we do work with clients, they do expect us to drop everything and go. And it's like, no, we all work day jobs and we have families and we actually have to schedule these things. We actually
I mean, even in Ghostbusters, they didn't pay the bills. That's why they shut down. So, I mean, yeah, you got to have a day job.
Right. And we're also volunteers. And that's the big thing especially with some of our clients who are needier, whether it's because of activity or just in general, we tell them, like, we can't drop everything to just go, or if I can't answer your email right away, it's not personal, I promise, I'm at work. And some people will get pretty nasty if I can't just drop everything and be there for them. And I say, you know, do you think we get paid for this? Because we're not charging you to work on your case. I'm paying to make this happen. Ghost hunting's a very expensive hobby.
It is. Like, that's something I think Ghostbusters kind of covered that when they like handed the hotel the bill.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, and they were like, well, we're not going to pay it. And it was like, what? This costs something.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was $5,000, I think it was, back in 1984.
Yeah, and that's a lot of money. Like, if you adjust for inflation, that's a ton of money.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you saw.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this week. The author Michelle Belanger posted on Twitter about she was aware of some team somewhere in the States that were going to charge $8,000 to deal with somebody's case. So that's inflation for you since 1984.
$8,000, man. I can leave the corporate IT world if there are people. What?
Yeah, people are showing
really.
that out.
Yeah, there was another team that got really grilled. I want to, it was maybe a year ago. No, I think it was even more recent. I think it was just a few months ago. Like, their website actually had like a list of services that they charged for. And I was like, yeah, that's gets into some pretty funny implications there, because one, how do you prove that the services were performed? And two, it's like, there's no two. It's how do you prove that the services were performed as promised? And also, like, how do you, like, what's the refund policy? Is there a refund policy? There probably isn't.
There could not be.
No. Yeah, it's kind of funny too when you talk about the business side of investigating. Even though I don't investigate, I have I'm an insurance agent by day, so I have some insurance carriers, and they've come to me and they're like, "Oh, well, yeah, we've had, paranormal investigators come get general liability insurance, And
That's the thing.
Yeah, right. And it's funny when you think about it, but it's understandable why it would be needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, liability insurance is important because, one, your stuff could get stolen. Two, people can get hurt. Three, just so many things can happen. It's just a good idea to have liability insurance, especially if you're working with the public in any capacity, whether it's cases or doing events.
Right. But when, as you're saying about being charged, people wouldn't think of that as something of getting insurance, for you having to go into someone's home or going on location somewhere, or even for your equipment, the general public wouldn't think about something like that.
Like, I could, sorry, go ahead, Dylan.
I was going to say, with the insurance side of things, you get cover if you're actually dispensing advice to people.
Mm-hmm.
And when we consider the kind of things that the people that we're dealing with, the advice they might need things on, of a sociological, psychological nature, if you're going to say something which causes problems in either of those, in a litigious society, we're going to be in problems.
Well, and teams have been taken to court for, causing, what's the word, pain and suffering, or emotional pain and suffering, either because they're like, oh, there's a demon in your house, and then you tell the dad there's a demon in his house and he has a heart attack from finding out there's a demon in his house and he's permanently disabled, and then turns out there's no demon in the house. Like, who pays for it?
Right.
Or moreover, would a court care that there was a demon in the house?
Right.
Like is that even a situation? But as far as like charging goes, like I could see charging for like travel, like if I'm in North Carolina, which I am, and somebody in Alaska like really wants like me specifically to come up, then it was like, okay, well, this is what it costs to get me to Alaska. But as far as like charging for sitting in your basement all night with a flashlight, like I don't see how you prove that of it. Now, if I'm cleansing a house, like, and I'm burning sage, I can prove that I burned sage.
Yeah.
But I can't prove that I excised a demon that I couldn't prove was there beyond like just circumstantially.
Yeah.
So I guess heading back into that vein, because like paranormal and film covers so many different things. Like we've talked a little bit about ghosts in film. What about demons in film, or demonology as it's portrayed in film?
Oh God. Okay,
I
sorry.
think Alex has got a demon there.
By the way, Alex, your
You
kitty
tell
cat
me.
mustache is hilarious. That is phenomenal. I absolutely
That is
love
great.
that kitty cat there.
And she's okay.
Oh my God, it's acrobatic.
Yep.
Acrocatic.
She's my little Cirque du Soleil kitty, but and she just did a number 2. So my life's great right now. Happy Mother's Day. Yeah, I demons and demonology, any sort of thing on film drives me insane, at least in the last 10 years. I mean, and I think it's really caused a lot of distortion in people's perceptions on what demonology is, how an exorcism works, what's the process with the Vatican. And this is a totally serious conversation while this cat has her butt in my face. So, make a decision, Callie. Okay.
There you go.
I just made the panel that much more entertaining. Yeah. So, because speaking as someone who does residential cases and I'm doing field work, and you probably know this as well, Chuck, with CAPS, how many people think they have a demon in their house based on really trivial things?
More than it should be allowed.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, I love movies with demons in them. I think they're incredibly entertaining, but that's because we can differentiate between reality and fiction. Like, I love The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I think that is a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
I think it's a great movie. But some people will watch that movie and be like, either try to emulate it in their own lives or try to live out that scenario in their own lives. I've had many people say, well, I'm possessed, and I've studied demonology. I've worked with a number of demonologists, and I'll be like, okay, well, why do you think this? And looking at it from a psychological standpoint, I mean, I'm not a licensed therapist. I have a licensed therapist on my team. She can't technically practice while she's on the team, but she knows the signs to look out for when it comes to things like this. Like, is this person trying to live out a fantasy, or is this something that could be something somewhat credible that we should explore more? Because a lot of people think you can just call a priest up and there you go. It's not that easy.
No.
It's interesting that you're bringing up the point about the demons in films. I think if we go back, even as far as the 1980s, where we had The Entity, which was set in LA, but then moving forward from post 2000, the films that we've had, the Conjuring series, the Paranormal Activity series, the focus is very much on the demons. And I don't know whether there's any data for it, but I would be inclined to suggest that there's been an increase in cases where people are reporting demons, or they think that they've got them.
Think they are. I think there was an article I read. It was from something, not the New York Post or anything, but it was something that said something like the Vatican is now like upping their staff of demonologists and exorcists, so that there's at least one in each parish, because they have so many like supposedly reported cases. And I always tell people that doesn't mean there's more demons. It just means more people think there are demons. And so that the Vatican needs to make sure that the church has enough staff to investigate these cases properly. So
there's an interesting, is it a book called American Cosmic by D.W. Pasulka? She's based at the University of North Carolina. And she was the advisor on the Conjuring film, the first one. And she's done some studies about how people react when they're watching horror movies. And what she found was that when people watched it, they often assumed that they were seeing real events. And the movie image trumped what the historical record was. So they buy what they see on screen in terms of what happened in the Conjuring house. And I mentioned the Conjuring 2 earlier on. I mean, I dare say that, Jen, you've seen that one, and and Alex as well, and Chuck. Where the hell did the nun come from in the Enfield haunting in London?
Right.
I mean, that's complete. There was completely nothing in there. And in fact, the Warrens' role at the Enfield case,
they weren't even turning up. They showed up like to try to get in, and they're like, "No, go away."
Yeah,
right, yeah,
and they based the whole film around them. And what tickled me was that when Ed Warren goes into the basement and it's all flooded, that house does not have a basement. The real one.
Oh, does it not?
No.
I did not know that. Oh, that's awful.
There are so many points in that. There are books available which document the actual tape recordings that were made by the investigators. And the words that Ed Warren was speaking in an interview scene were actually done by real investigators from the Society for Psychical Research. Yet people believe the Warrens were responsible for solving it.
I studied it through the Guyline Playfair's book, This House is Haunted.
Yeah. So, good old demons.
Now that's a shirt.
And it's funny because I love the storyline of it. If it was not packaged as this was a true event, like I like The Nun. I loved The Nun. I really did. And actually, one of my most popular posts on my team's page is this. I did all this research on the real Valak the demon, and and the parish, the church, is actually a real place, and Valak is a real demon, but Valak definitely does not look like a nun. Nor does Valak really do any of the things that the nun did in the Nun movie. But I loved the storytelling of it. I think James Wan, anything he touches is really good. But the thing that sullies it for me is just the way that it's painted as based on true events, and people think that's how it happened.
Well, it's like if you take based on true events out of the title, or I guess out of the opening credits, it's a perfect film. Like in terms of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, it's an entertaining horror flick.
Yeah. Right. So I guess that leads me back to a question I had whenever I was like thinking about this panel yesterday and today. What does it look like when a film gets it right? Like for you, like what do you feel like a film does to get it right? And not about a specific film, but any film. Like, what does it look like when they get it right?
I mean, I've already mentioned The Exorcism of Emily Rose, but I think they kind of got it right there with at least with the court case, because it wasn't necessarily like a movie about demons. It was this court case, and how this priest was basically trying to explain the situation that happened, and these are based on his accounts. And I mean, and it was loosely based on true events of Annalise Michael. But I don't know, if people were really paying attention to the movie, then you probably saw it. You would see it as, did this actually happen, or is this just what the priest is regurgitating? And and this was his perception on what happened. That's where I did appreciate that movie. So in that case,
one of the movies that I like a lot, in terms of maybe getting some of it right, not all of it, is White Noise. with Michael Keaton. This
Oh,
where they
yeah.
have, you know, a lot of EVP work and, you know, working with, you know, using the television to get the images and the words and writing it all down. And so I like that a lot. Obviously, it doesn't work that way, but it's still, that technical side of it seems to be pretty good for me.
I think I'm yet to actually find one that, apart from like what Alex and Jenna just said, that where there's little bits, you know, in each film that you could take. The original Poltergeist, where they've got the team turning up. Again, it's very tech heavy.
Yeah.
In the new one, they have a team turning up again, but they change it by bringing in a psychic as well. So they've tapped into the reality TV genre, how it's changed things.
Yeah.
But no, I can't really think of one where I think, oh yeah, that'd be the way. Because I think, as Alex has alluded to, it'd be the most boring film you could ever watch.
It would take 47 hours to watch.
Yeah.
Which, so I guess like let's fantasy book like what is something you'd want to see in a paranormal film that you haven't seen or that you haven't seen enough of?
There was and y'all are gonna get a sneak peek of this because this is gonna come out on Tuesday, and I know this is gonna be released a little bit later. But I'm working on researching the Watsika Wonder. Dylan, you would love this case. You would love it, and it's one of the first documented cases of spirit possessions in America, and Callie's very excited about it too. And as I was reading it, and it actually has a lot of supporting documentation, not just from one of the doctors, I use that term loosely, that published the paper about it, but you know, there were newspaper editors who were also witness to these events. And I'm sitting here like, why wasn't this ever covered more? Like, this is a great case, like that might have some of the strongest supporting evidence of life after death. So that's something I'm working on right now. And probably by the time this panel is released, it's already going to be out. But I wish people would cover like those kind of stories. It has a happy ending, which, you know, is not a trend in the horror genre really most of the time. But it has a very happy ending. I mean, no one dies. Well, one person dies, but that's the person who possesses the child. But it's like this beautiful story of redemption and like having a second chance with your lost loved ones. And like I said, it's one of the most compelling cases I've ever read. And I've always known about it, but thanks to the quarantine, I now have more time to dive into it. And again, I looked at it, I'm like, why don't we cover this more? Like this is an incredible case. And granted, I know maybe there's some fabrication in it, but even if there's just a little shred of truth in it, it might be one of the, like I said, the strongest case of life after death we've ever encountered here. So I wish they would cover more of that, because to me, that's more interesting than, you know, dressing up the Enfield poltergeist as something that it totally wasn't.
How about for you, Jen? Is there something you'd like to see like more of in how ghosts are portrayed in film?
I think for me, it would be nice. It would be a lot easier if, you know, other mediums or psychics all had the same experiences along the same level. Just because it's so hard sometimes when you speak to others. We all get information very differently. So whenever you have, you know, a psychic or on film, then yeah, those are mine. You know, you either have them being like the flamboyant, you know, woo, or, you know, you have them just kind of like so out there that it's not really down to earth and who we really are. So that would be nice in terms of, you know, the psychic side of it.
All right, Dylan, for you, like, what is something you'd like to see more of in the portrayal of ghosts and ghost hunters in films?
More proton packs.
I agree. I firmly agree.
With that.
You know, I was watching The Conjuring 2 thinking, if only Vankman was there.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I would love to see. Obviously, I can't wait to see the new Ghostbusters film whichever year it does eventually come out in, because it's not this year, it's next year now, isn't it? Hopefully, I'd like to see them in different places because I love the haunted heritage of different places. You know, you'll find that Britain has got a unique one. I'd love to see Nick Frost and Simon Pegg as Ghostbusters. That would be awesome. But equally, there are different places in America. I mean, you could do something in Tombstone or Deadwood or somewhere different. Looking at different ghosts around the world and how those stories could change.
Right, and you bring up a really good point about how like culturalism. 'Cause I read something once, and it made sense as a literature scholar. Like different countries have different venues in which their horror takes place. For me, I would like to see more of that as well. Like I'd like to see something that takes advantage of maybe a ghost I don't like associate with a certain venue, or like an outside perspective, which I think is great. That's what World Film does. World Film brings a whole slew of ghosts in varying like levels of horror. Or in like the case of like Hayao Miyazaki's work, like ghosts are endearing and tragic and lovely all at the same time. You know, I think that culturalism has so much to do with it. What is the most egregious offense you've seen in film, and in terms of like how ghosts are treated, or how like the profession of the ghost hunter or the genre is treated? Like what's the worst example? Like it offended you?
Oh, that it offended. Okay. Ooh. Ooh, that's a good question.
I'd say for me, it would go back to the Conjuring.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
And the role that, you know, the credibility that is given to, you know, two people who had very little to do with it.
Yeah.
And if you're going to portray something, just have the decency to tell it as it was.
Yeah. I mean, little embellishment's okay for the sake of storytelling, but a little exaggeration, I'm okay with that. But
what was interesting was on the extras to the Blu-ray for The Conjuring 2. I don't know if any of you have actually seen that, but there's an interview with Janet, as she now is, who was the little girl at the centre of the activity. And she actually says how much she was thankful for the Warrens for the help. And we're thinking, you know, who's prompted her to say that? And if a film company has done that, then that is poor.
Money talks.
It does.
Well, and and when The Conjuring 2 was about to come out, I forgot who it was, but it started to come out that the Warrens weren't actually involved in the case. And at least in the paranormal community, I was in my small corner of the internet, a lot of people were starting to bring that up, like, well, that seems a little fishy. And then I forgot who it was. It might have been Lorraine's son-in-law, but he was like, no, they were actually there. I mean, the family was so happy to see Lorraine on set, and they hugged and kissed and cried and were so all this other things. And I'm like, okay. So it turned into like, no, they were there. You just didn't know about it. And I'm like, why didn't they talk more about it, like over like the 3 or 4 decades since the case happened?
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents.
Film has to give a resolution to it. Like they have to give a resolution to what's going on in the film. Like the haunting can't perpetuate, or else they expect a sequel, or so on and so forth. But I think that because a lot of times, like when you go to investigate, there is no resolution. There's no closure to it. If that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot with cases. I mean, there's really no resolution, or it comes back. Whereas in movies, it's portrayed as, oh, the ghost is gone and never coming back, and there's peace for the rest of the world. And
yeah, unfortunately, it's not all slide the trap across the floor, catch it, and dump it in the thing in the wall.
No.
Like unfortunately, that's it. Okay, so we are starting to draw a little like I guess like close to the end of this panel. So what I guess if you had to recommend like for regardless whether it's for accuracy or depiction or entertainment value, what is like the one ghost film that people need to see in your opinion, like the one that defines it for you as a genre?
It's a toss-up between Ghostbusters and Poltergeist. I don't know. I just think they're fun.
They're great movies.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Poltergeist, and The Orphanage too is really good in terms of.
Oh yeah, I forgot about The Orphanage.
Yeah.
The Others. That's another one. The Others.
Yes, The Others is great.
Yeah, The Others is terrific, like cold and terrific. How about for you, Dylan?
You're probably going to be really surprised at this. It's Ghostbusters.
What?
I do have a soft spot for the Frighteners.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Frighteners. Yeah.
That's so. Mine is Truman Capote's adaptation of the Henry James novel, novella, The Turn of the Screw, The Innocents, with Deborah Kerr. Like I found that film so psychological because for me it captured like is this really happening to this woman and these children, or is it all in her head? And that's so much of paranormal investigation is, all right, is this person actually experiencing this, or is this a psychological? It was the first film that I had seen where it was treated like a psychological thriller versus there's ghosts, you should be afraid. And I always loved that and how it was depicted. So as we draw to a close, I'd like to thank all of you guys for being here with us today. And if you guys would just very quickly tell people where they can find out more about you and your projects and the things that you do.
Well, my name's Alex Matsuo. You can find me at alexmatsuo.com. Wow, I can spell my name. Wow. alexmatsuo.com. And you'll find all my blogs there. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Find me there. You can find all my content. And if you want to talk shop about the paranormal, feel free to send me a message.
All right. And Jen, where can they find out more about you and what you do?
You can find me under my writing name, which is crimsonheart.com, which is CRYMSYNHART.com. Plus, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can just check me out there.
All right, Dylan, where can more people find out about you?
They can find out more at theghosthunter.co.uk to find out about the research that goes on. And also, if you're interested in, great spooky stories and haunted heritage, there's the websites, the Great British Ghost Tour.co.uk and Great American Ghost Tour.co.uk. So you can have a look at, do some virtual tours, which is all we can do at this time. Yeah. If you want to find out some stories about the UK or the United States.
All right, and you guys can find out more about me at realchuckcart.com. That's also my Instagram and Twitter handles. Thank you guys very much for being here. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.